Hello, it is lovely to see you again. Thanks for tuning in. We are on holidays, and the only sad thing about that is that we are without Murphy, our beloved dog. But I have a lot of good companions in terms of books to keep me distracted from what my puppy might be getting up to in kennels. But today I'm just going to talk about two of them. I'm going to review The Candy House by Jennifer Egan and the book by Sequoia Nagamatsu called How High We Go in the Dark. Now, the reason for putting these two books together is in fact twofold. A, they're structured very similarly, and I think they make a nice little pair. And B, well, they're quite meaty. They're books that give you a lot to kind of chew on. Starting with The Candy House, now this one comes to us from Corsair. Jennifer Egan won the Pulitzer with Visit from the Goon Squad. Now some of you may or already have read that one. And this does take characters from the Goon Squad. So if you've read it, you have kind of an added element and a kind of that sort of, you can be smug about knowing already who some of these characters are. It was a book that stood out, I think, for its kind of experimental play with form. The Candy House is very similar in terms of this form that Egan uses, and it is something that Nagamatsu is using as well, which is using interlinking stories, which are very closely connected, very tightly woven, but kind of give a looseness to the frame of narrative arc. In The Candy House, we have several characters, and I think what I liked most about this book was the fact that we're invited in the early stages into a little group of people, one of whom is desperate for, Bix is desperate for an idea for his next big project, and he's an innovative, creative man in his 40s, and he in conversation with a couple of academic sort of research-minded people comes up with a new idea about uploading your consciousness. So we're in a world which is a little bit removed, but not really that far away from the world we live in, which has experimentation with artificial intelligence. And in Egan's book, we are looking at a world where everybody gets really excited about this world, that this entrepreneurial sort of, genius really in a lot of ways has come up with, where you can upload consciousness, you can review your memories, you can decide to review other people's memories with sort of provisos attached. And I suppose that was a long and convoluted sentence, but what I like is that we get into this circle and eventually we're allowed, Egan lets us situate ourselves with other members of this group, and it seems random, but in the long run, it's not really, because we will get stories from different people in that group or from members of their family, or it sort of crisscrosses time, relationships, and it's all about connection. It's not quite sci-fi, and it's definitely not dystopian. But it's one of those reads where I spent my time saying, oh my God, how did she do that? This is so clever, because as you go through the book, you're backward and forwarding saying, oh, I know who that character is because it was mentioned in the first one, and then there were 3 sons, and now here's the last one, and oh golly, how did she do that? So I spent a lot of time saying, how did she do that? I was gobsmacked by it. It's incredibly sophisticated writing, and I suppose I really had to get my reading teeth in. You know, I don't like to be spoon-fed. I don't like, sometimes I do when I'm very tired, but I felt this was a book that, she was pointing all the time to other people, other narratives, and really asks you in a way to plunge back in again and to have some fun. So I would say have some fun. This is not actually its final cover, but it's something very close. It is a lot of fun, but also she's dealing with a lot of what if all of this internet, social media, artificial intelligence, it all looks glamorous and wonderful, but there's going to be a price. Very deep. Sequoia Nagamatsu. This comes to us from Bloomsbury. So it's similar in its structure. It's an absolutely fabulous read. Again, it is actually a debut novel. He's written short stories. And again, this started as sort of, well, is formatted as interlinking stories. And it is perhaps a little bit harder to, but there's more confronting material in this one. And it's probably harder for some people to say, oh gosh, I'm really dying to pick this one up, because it is dealing with things that are very close to our reality now. And these are books are both very clever from that point of view. We're looking at now, and we're looking at some of the things which are not great about us as humans and about what can happen. So whereas she's looking at AI and the lack of human connectivity, Nagamatsu is probably looking more at, well, plague. Now, most people will say, oh God, I don't want to read about the plague in the middle of a pandemic. But it's not just that. It's about I suppose, the circle, the cycle of life. It is about being connected to other people, but it's also about death and mourning and grief, and how we enter into a conversation with ourselves. So we become very aware of ourselves as we watch a certain sort of devastation wreak itself upon humanity. And if we're confronted with that great finality and lose someone, how do we, what conversation do we have with ourselves? What conversations do we have with the people who have died, or with the people, the kind of the randomness of the people that were left, whether we choose to or not, connect to, who are left and who we might connect with, and it might be seemingly random. And there's a lot of this randomness going on, because reading this, I felt like, golly, this is like one of those search and find activity books. I got really pleased with myself when I saw in each section of it, oh my God, there's a character. Oh, that's the one from. And again, like Egan, I was backwarding and forwarding through, from one section to another, and wondering how on earth he was going to loop. Some of them seem to be quite truncated, quite separate from each other. And then as you need to get to the end, you may have to work a bit for it, but you really need to get to the end to see what all these connections are. It is much more speculative. It's very sci-fi. It's quite dark. There's everything from, robo-dogs, to death hotel, elegy hotels, to sort of fairground rides of, I suppose there's a ride called Osiris where dying children are, helped, ushered through into the next world in the kindest possible way. It's about kindness. It's about being hopeless, but finding that you're really not that hopeless. It's about research. It's about the importance of science. And it's an enthralling read. Another one that you needed to get your reading teeth sort of firmly in place so that you can chomp your way through it. And it felt quite sort of very much like the author was riding the horses of the apocalypse, and they were giving him a bit of a hard time because, wow, he races through issues. Both of these are astonishing. Not easy, and they're definitely not light reads, but your world will be richer for them. That's it. There'll be more soon. See you.